thing. It just does whatever it wants. Oh,
it
hello.
does?
Welcome. Here we are.
Welcome. We're live.
No,
Happy Monday.
I know we just created the season 1 bloopers, but that might need to be added right there. That was pretty good.
Oh, 100%. Please, Katie, do add this to the bloopers.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, hey, welcome to the Business Velocity Through the 5 Facets of Business podcast. We're your hosts, Dave Newell, Hannah Panuski, and with our guests, we explore actionable insights and share stories of real businesses. Whether you're a startup or a seasoned business leader, understanding how to harness the 5 facets of your business will help you propel your growth to achieve business velocity. Hannah, good to chat with you again today. Who's our guest?
Yeah. So I am very excited to talk to our guest today. Our guest is a friend of yours, Mike Mooney. Mike has spent the last 25 years of his career, as he likes to say, going in circles. He worked as a senior executive in the high-speed motorsports industry from NASCAR to IndyCar and Formula One. Mike built high-performing organizational teams to create award-winning programs for globally recognized brands like Mercedes-Benz, I've heard of them, 3M, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, and Walmart. Mike is an author, executive coach, facilitator, and a sought-after speaker with messages and stories that empower people to unlock potential, drive opportunity, and create traction in their businesses and lives by being more present, intentional, and curious. All things that we both love to talk about. So without further adu, we'll bring Mike on. Yeah, we got to put him in the featured spot.
I don't mind. No, you put me down on the other side, wherever you want to put me. You can put me in the corner. That's okay.
No, absolutely not. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Hannah, Dave, it's great to be with you all today. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. I was doing a lot of research into your work and the focuses that you have in your background. And you heard me kind of introduce you there with your bio, but please, I'd love to hear from yourself. Like, how did you get into the motorsports world? And then how did that branch into the executive coaching?
Yeah, that's great question. So if you bear with me for 1 second, since you asked how did I get into it originally, I didn't start in motorsports.
We have props. Here we go.
I have props. My first job out of college, I was an assistant footwear manager at Kmart. That is my tag. I was doing blue light special calling over the PAs, right? So I did that for about 2 months and realized that's not where I wanted to be at the time. So was fortunate to find an opportunity in communications in the motorsports industry, and that really unlocked my passions for what I'd love to do, which is connecting dots. So throughout my career, having been able to work in the different facets of communications, brand strategy, marketing, crisis management, reputation, rehab, it's really all about like connecting dots. You know, when brands were coming in and saying, how and where should we spend $10 million, $50 million, $75 million in motorsports, my job was to develop those plans, was to sort of connect where it would make sense for their business, where they could connect with authenticity with their customers, how they can bring their brands to life in a way that was credible and authentic for them themselves. So that's, you know, I've kind of compressed like 25 years into about 30 seconds there, but it's just been an amazing opportunity to work in an environment where you had the opportunity to consistently work with high performers. This is a sport where you're dealing with decisions that have to be made in pressure-driven moments, and having worked around championship level drivers and teams and seeing how they were constantly refining and working on their high performance vehicles, their race cars, it really left an impact on me and how I operated as not only an individual, but also a leader within the business too.
Yeah, I'm sure. How could you not? I mean, like, I've heard the term that you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you're spending your time with all of those folks, that's got to really light a light bulb in you.
It does. It does for sure. And that kind of, we could segue to that second part of how did I get from there to here?
Yeah.
Right. Because it was because of that. I mean, I'm working around these champions, and they were just constantly, you know, building, fixing, restoring, innovating these high performance vehicles so they would be competitive. They could be in contention in the race when it mattered most. And it's during that time that I realized that there was just another type of high performance vehicle out there that needed the same type of building and fixing and restoration and innovation. And that's you and me. That's people. And that really lit the fire for me to want to take the last 25 plus years of this experiences and stories and cultures and leadership to really start speaking and coaching and training and bringing that to the corporate world where, we could really do more and be more if we could be more present, intentional, and curious. That's really what it came down to for me.
Yeah. I love a lot of the words that you used. We use a piece around connecting the dots. I mean, we do that from an organizational development perspective, right? Because there's a lot of little pieces that you could see. It's kind of like seeing the symptoms, right? Like the symptoms show up, or the opportunities show up, but they show up in pieces.
Yeah. And
it's kind of about putting that puzzle together. And you just alluded to, a few different things. You talked about presence, authenticity, and you talked about high performance. Like, how do those 2, 3, 4 things kind of interrelate with each other? And how do you kind of call that out of folks?
Well, it's a great question. So I'll start with this authenticity. I always go back to the sniff test, right? People can tell right away if you are authentic or not. There's just sort of that vibe, that smell, that energy around. People are chameleons, right? So I've always found that in our world, in motorsports, that authenticity in our communication, in our relationships, more importantly with ourselves, I think that's really where it starts first and foremost. It's got to come from here as leaders. We've got to really embrace our own authenticity in order to then bring that out of others. So to me, that was always a key element to that. I believe that presence, my goodness, it is the most incredible gift that we can give each other in this world right now, where we are constantly challenged for attention, to be able to sit here and be in the moment. Because when we're in that moment and we're present, we can actually pick up on the nuances in a conversation. I can pick up on your body language or your tone or your rate or your pitch. I can pick up on something that in the way that you phrase a challenge, that there might be something more here that I kind of want to dig a little deeper into now, because I'm actually listening. And there may be opportunities to collaborate when we show up and we're present in that moment. So I just think that really those two pieces, authenticity and presence, are key foundations, especially today for leaders to really, if they want to, look, we have all, there are resources, there are apps, there's AI generation for everything these days, right? But it comes down to the people. We're not there authentically or with any type of presence, we aren't going to be able to get the best out of those resources or tools, my opinion, humbly.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be curious were there moments in your career where you have recognized like, oh, that leader's really good. Why are they good? And then you kind of found these qualities, or was it something that like, as you were stepping into more of a leadership role, you were drawn to, I want to be the best leader that I can be. So let me find those qualities. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that question. I'm really big on observation and synthesizing. So for me, I've always, to your point, like and I think a lot of us, you can see, wow, that's good leadership. And you usually see that though more often than not when times are tough and you're in difficult situations and you see real leadership show up versus the kind that someone's like trying to rifle through a book and to pick out the top 10 things I should be doing right now. So I was always keen on observing and then synthesizing internally what felt right for me. So I'd like to say that I really am, like, my leadership style has been a combination of the leaders that I've had the really great opportunity to work around and observe, and then figure out how do I put that into play for me in an authentic manner. Because I can't be them, but I surely can take the styles in which they communicate, in which they opened communications and conversation and brought people in, the way that they managed in crisis. Those are all things that I have taken note of. And, I'm not perfect, but I try to put them into play as often as I can.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you called out presencing, in part because we do live in an attention economy, right? Like it's so everybody's kind of craving for everybody else's attention. Like, yeah, but look at me. How do we get our content to stand out? How do we get our messages to stand out? Why aren't they listening to me in this meeting? Yeah. I mean, there's so much just kind of this craving for attention. I think, to your point, like one of the gifts you can give somebody is that focused attention. Like, I'm actually like really paying attention to you. I'm validating what you're saying. I'm making eye contact. I am observing. I'm synthesizing. I'm repeating back. And I think it's a practice and a skill that, you know, even as leaders at times is unnatural, right? Like as you're a, you know, business leader, speaker, traveling all over the place. You've got, you know, 100 things going on at any given week. We're the same, right? Like we've got 15, we just got out of a meeting with, you know, some big decisions that we need to make and some things that are swirling around in our brains. Yeah. And it's difficult then when you've got, you know, the soup is all being mixed in your brain to then be like, oh yeah, I'm here now. Like what are some practices, tips, tricks, things that you coach people through? I'm getting real like practical, I guess, on this of like, how do I practically presence myself? What are some of the things that I can put into play or practices I can take on that'll help me kind of clear the clutter, so to speak, and get real locked in on a conversation?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I love getting granular, and we'll do it. You know, to your point, Dave, I had a conversation with a CMO a few months back, and we were talking about planning for, you know, next quarter and things that were coming up. And he kind of chuckled and he goes, man, you know, you're looking at planning the business by the quarter and a month. And he said, looks at me and he goes, yeah, what time is it? I'm planning it by the minute right now. And I really feel that not only, I mean, that to me spoke volumes, not only to what you were saying, the attention economy, but also this compression that leaders are experiencing and how quickly their business can change. And more importantly, how quickly they feel they have to stay ahead in order to anticipate where those changes are going to come from. So I completely agree with you there. And I would say like one of the first tips or granular steps I would actually recommend for anyone and people that I coach now as well is how you start your day. How you start your day absolutely matters. So for me, now I'm going to take a step back, but this also happens on a daily. So every Sunday I'll take 25 minutes and I will map out my week of things and work and meetings and events, things about priorities, my goals for the week. And then I literally go into my calendar and every time is blocked and I know when I've got to do this, that, and the other, which allows me to be more present and intentional when the time comes instead of getting there Monday morning and going, oh, well, I'm shot out of the cannon. Here's that first call, that first meeting, and I'm going. So even if you don't start on a Sunday and do that, I always recommend that you start your day by looking at the calendar and going, okay, I got to prioritize where do I need my energy and my attention most, right? Because those are two resources that we just don't seem to get enough of. So if I know that I've got 4 key meetings today that I've got to be lasered in and present, then I know going into it, I'm going to set that intention that these are the areas that I need to be like on my toes and listening, right? And really being engaged. And there might be some other tasks along the way that I can kind of ease off that and just kind of go into my manual mode. But I really think that by first identifying where you need to show up that way is a huge win to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I hear in that is creating clarity out of chaos. And it is a practice and it's a skill to like hone when you work in a chaotic environment and when you work in a chaotic world. I mean, now a lot of us working from home, we have an added element or an added ability to control our stimulus and the things that interrupt us, as opposed to maybe being in an office when people could pop in and out. But we still do have cell phones, or we have like kids or dogs or, you know, other things that still can add chaos. So then you still have to like cultivate this skill of, well, when do I find my clarity? When do I plan out my week? When do I make sure that like, okay, even if the morning's a little messy, from noon to 1, I got to make sure that like everything is controlled, blocked out, I'm dialed in, I've prepared. So I 100% agree with that, because I think it's applicable whether you are, working from home or you're back in an office. So you're solopreneur or you've got a huge team. You still have to be able to set at least priority for yourself, because then you're probably gonna have to set priority for the rest of your team too.
100%. I mean, think about it. I mean, as the leader, like I want to key in on what you had mentioned, and that is saying, trying to be in that chaos. Well, as a leader, people are looking to you to be, how are you handling the chaos? Right. As leaders, we actually have that opportunity to manage it. We can't always control it, but we can manage in the way we show up. So, I mean, I think of it this way. Have you all ever gone to the Whitewater Center or been whitewater rafting?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that there are times when you got the oar in the water and you're paddling and you're directing, and other times when you got that paddle in, but you feel like you're just along for the ride, So I always use that analogy for starting your day intentionally by looking through and saying, where do I need to be showing up the best? Because that is the difference for me between going through my day with that oar inside the raft, and I just feel like I'm in the chaos and swirling, or this is where I need to dig in and put that paddle in to help direct a little bit more, but every leader has that opportunity if we choose, keyword, if we choose to actually build in that time to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I love that you said the word choose, because the question that's been swirling in my head as you've been talking about this really has been like, presencing is a choice. Like curiosity is a choice. Like those are decisions that we can make, and it's kind of like breathing, right? Which is like, it's a thing that we do. And the unique thing about breath is like, it just happens, right? We don't have to be conscious of it. It's just a thing. And when we're conscious of it, we can totally affect the pace, the depth, the rhythm of how we breathe. And I think presencing is kind of the same thing. It's like, we can just be present when presence feels like it wants to show up. And we also have this opportunity to be really thoughtful and connected to it, like we can be thoughtful and connected to our breath. So I want to pull this forward in some ways, because I think there are certain moments where presence matters the most. And I know one of the things that connected you and I a long time ago, was the work you've done around reputation, your book, Reputation Shift.
Yeah.
And there's just so many good nuggets, so many good lessons, so many good pieces in there. And I want to kind of pull that forward, right? Because as you're thinking about reputation, I want to bring that term in part because our presence, our authenticity, some of these things that you've been talking about have an effect, right? Like they have an effect on the dynamic and the relationship and how other people perceive us.
That's right.
Can you just talk to us a little bit about, how reputation is influenced by your ability to be authentic or present, and maybe even a couple of examples? I know you have 100.
How much time do you have? No, man, you're just going to my heart, So yes, I'll break it down this way. Like I was never a math person at all. It's communications my entire life. If I got a C in math at home as a kid, we celebrated. That C was for celebration for math for me. So ironically, in my book, Reputation Shift, one of the core elements was something I did break into an equation. I put the reputation equation, and it's the building blocks, right? So it's simply your values plus your decisions plus your behavior over time will equal your reputation. And there are two keys in this. One is saying values. It starts with values, and then consistency and time, because there's no shortcut for consistency and time. It is, and we have to be mindful across that continuum. So when you talk about authenticity, Dave, yes, that's why I key in there, because reputation starts with your values. And I often do this in my workshops, and you'd be amazed, because at first this was an evolution, because we talk about company values. And of course, you sit around the table with leaders, okay, great. So what are the company values? And they'll rattle them off, and they're fantastic. It's trust and honesty and communication and teamwork. Great, great, great. Okay. Then I ask them the next question. And this is where I get them literally going, looking at each other, looking at ceiling tiles, looking around, because I would ask them, great, tell me today where each of those values is going to come to life in your work and your interactions. Tell me where tell me where you're going to be trustworthy if trust is on there, where you're going to be honest if honesty is a value, where teamwork, where will you be a team leader or a team player today? So what I'm trying to do is pull a thread between what people say is a value and then intentionally, how do we bring the value to life? That's the magic right there. And that's where being intentional of saying, gosh, if that is true, where can I bring this to life for my business? And the beautiful part of it is you can go up and down the chain on the hierarchy, on your organization, and every person can find a way for how they can bring those company values aligned with their values to life every day in their role. That's going to help drive the business forward. And that's what it means to be intentional, so that we are showing up and showing through authentically. And those values aren't just things on the walls, but people say, man, I feel that. I felt that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we definitely resonate with that because we like to talk to our clients about behaviors. Behaviors are how your values manifest quite literally in your day. Right. And talk to, the topic of your book. I mean, I feel like behavior is your reputation. When people talk or gossip around the water cooler about their boss or the people that they work with, they talk about their behaviors. They talk about things that they did or how they acted or reacted or whatever. Right. So I would actually love to hear from you just a little bit in, from your work, like why is reputation so important when it comes to being a leader? Expand on that. Like, what does it affect and how have you seen it really affect someone's ability to lead?
Yeah. So there are a couple different angles that I'll take on this, Hannah, because it's great that you help frame it up that way. There are a number of ways that reputation and leadership tie, and then more importantly, impact business. We see this oftentimes if you look at like Fortune 500 companies, when they bring a new CEO in, okay? And if you see that stock start to pop and go up because that CEO is in, there is a reputation tied to that. That they have a history, a track record, a reputation of doing work that's going to help shareholder value grow because they know how to run and grow the business. Boom. That's one way we can tie it to see the power and the impact. The other ways, though, are more in the culture and the way that leaders are able to get ideas brought to life. I mean, you think about what leadership is and what people are trying to do, is bring new ideas to pass. If people don't trust you, if they don't understand or you don't have a strong reputation, it's going to take you longer to build a road to trust and build a road to a place where people are going to want to fall in line with you. They may do it because of positional power initially, but that's only going to work so long and go so far before people are going to say, we're not following this person anymore. We're not going into the fire anymore because I don't think that they've got what it takes. So you can see it culturally, you can see it financially. You can also see it too when companies do stumble, because look, companies are made up of individuals and humans, and sometimes our humanness can create a human mess, and we are going to make mistakes. So if you do have a leader that's got a strong reputation, then you're more than willing to, or people will be more than willing to give you a second chance based upon how you handle the crisis. And that's a whole other conversation right there on the right ways to handle it. And we see companies do it and emerge well. And we see companies that just foul it up 7 ways from Sunday, and it takes them much longer. They lose market share, customer base. You go down the line of the financial implications. Yeah.
No, I think it's really great. I mean, one of the questions we love to ask is, what's it like here on the worst day? In part because it's a really good indicator of what the culture is actually like.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's relatively easy, not saying it's simple, but it's easier, maybe is the best way to say that, when things are good, right? Revenue's up, team's happy, jobs are getting out, stuff's working, like culture is great. That's easy. It's easier to have a good culture when things are good. It's really difficult to do it when things are rough, when revenue stagnates, when products not getting out the door on time, service is failing, clients are mad, whatever it is, like whatever the scenarios are, teams feel like they're falling apart, indirect communication, all the different things that can show up. It's a lot harder to own, to drive, to build your culture in those periods of time. I would love to just, any tips or tricks that we're getting granular again here. Any tips or tricks, or like any examples where you're like, this company just nailed it. Like they did this when things got really hard, or any kind of like examples that you have. I would love to just hear something specific.
Yeah. Well, I'll gosh,
And I know I'm putting you on the spot on that one.
You are putting me on the spot. So I may talk around just a little bit. And if it comes to me, I'll go there. If not, we'll keep going in the conversation.
You can take your time. Yeah, no worries.
I would say that, well, first off, in racing, there's always a saying that winning cures all ills, right? So with your race team, you may not have a great culture, but if you're winning, no one's really paying attention to it. Yet I know when I was at Roush Fenway at the time of Roush Keselowski Racing, now we were going through a horrible time of on-track competition, and we really did face the culture backlash because we realized that it wasn't what we thought we had, and it wasn't giving us the foundation we needed in a tough time to build upon. So I would say that one of the I'm trying to think of companies that I've seen. I mean, there are many out there in crisis that have done well. I've seen 3M do it when I was doing work with them years ago, where they had an issue with ear protection in the military, and they put this is a company that is used to having problems and coming up with solutions for them. That's part of their cultural drive, which is find a problem, fix it, and then go in there and make it right. So I mean that's a really good example. But I think the other part that I do want to key in on for leaders in times like that I think might be more helpful for your listeners is around this idea of, when was the best time to plant a tree?
6 months ago.
Or 25 years ago, a while ago, right? When's the next best time? Well, today. So listen, your business may be humming along, all right? And that's great. And Dave, you probably know this. What happens at businesses? They're cyclical, right? I mean, if you're riding high right now, eventually there's going to be a point where you're going to be bottoming out. So this is, if you're in that spot right now, leader who's listening to us right now today, this is your time. If you have not built up a level of transparency with your intention, with your leadership intention, this is the time to do it. And what I mean by that is when times are tough, usually we have to have really difficult conversations, very direct conversations, meaningful, important conversations about performance, about output, process, whatever that might be. What is tied to each of those elements of process, output, and results? People.
Okay. Uncertainty in people. Yeah.
Well, right? People. People
who are uncertain.
Because when they hear something from the leader, the uncertainty is, what are they really trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What's the real message in this?
Mm-hmm.
Are they talking about me directly? Right. So suddenly, as a leader, you're trying to convey a message and a direction and a plan to go forward. Yet your team, if they don't clearly know your intention, are going to be sitting there, and that little voice in the back of their head is going to start chirping. What do you mean by that? What does she mean by that? Is that about me? Am I going to get laid off? Am I going to be fired?
Yeah.
Right. And then you start losing energy around that. Now your mind starts to spin and shift into other directions other than where it needs to be. So where I'm going here, that there was a British psychologist who did a great study on intention and leadership. And what he found in his study was that if a leader just told their team two things, it could radically shift the way that team interacted together and with that leader in good times, but also in times of crisis. And it was simply this. The leader would say, I'm here for your greatest good. I'm here for your greatest good. I want you to succeed. I want you to find the fulfillment, the joy, the success, the empowerment, all the things that you're looking for in this company. I am here for your greatest good. And I mean you no harm. I mean you no harm. Psychologically, emotionally, HR frowns upon physically. But the point being that if a leader could just instill the intention, this gets back to presence and authenticity and being intentional, sure. Right? That whatever I say to you, I mean you no harm, and I'm here for your greatest good. So please take it for that, because we're on this team and we're moving forward. You don't have to worry if I'm playing games. You don't have to worry about any sub message. That's my intention, and I've just found that to be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, no, I really like that a lot for a lot of different reasons. And I think maybe my last question would be, this is something I was thinking about before we hopped in today. Can you fix a bad reputation as a leader? And I would open that up to both of you. I would be curious to know both of your answers to this.
Go ahead, Dave.
I think you can. I mean, to your point, Mike, you brought this up earlier around, reputation, the reputation formula you talked about. You talked about like time, behavior over time, like character over time, right? And I think you can fix a reputation, but the way we talk about, the way we use a similar methodology in thinking about trust building, right? Because it's the same idea, like relationship is trust, right? So we talk about time and behavior, and we talk about it like stacking dominoes, right? And every time you do, like let's say Mike shows up on time every day for 5 years, it's like, well, I'm just stacking a domino in this direction, positive direction, for 5 years. So like my assumption now becomes that Mike's going to show up on time. Now he has a reputation of me believing that he's going to show up on time. But after 5 years, if Mike misses one day, that's fine. Not a big deal. Mike had a bad thing. Something happened, like out of character, totally small potatoes, not a big deal. But if Mike all of a sudden like starts stealing from the company, it's like, whoa, what just happened? Like all of those dominoes that we stacked for 5 years fell down and went the opposite direction. Now I've got 5 years of mistrust that I have to undo. That's right. And so it's not starting from neutral when something goes bad. It's starting from a negative, and you have to climb your way back out of it with behavior, apology, vulnerability, authenticity, presence, all those things help to expedite that process. But it does just take time and consistency of operating in the opposite direction of the mistrust.
Yeah.
What he said. No, I mean, you're spot on. You're spot on. Warren Buffett had a great quote. It takes 20 years to build a great reputation and less than 5 minutes to ruin it. And if we thought about it that way, we would probably operate and act differently. So, Hannah, to your question and building on Dave's point, yes, you can rebuild after a reputation disaster or crisis. We've seen that with companies. We've seen it with leaders time and time again. It takes time. And fortunately, in today's news cycle, even though the internet never forgets, but in the news cycle, our rule of thumb was always, hey, give it 2 weeks, and then we can start doing the work we've got to do, because we'll be on to something different and new. But it really, in order to do it, there are some key steps, and there has to be, first off, the transparency and ownership. And what that comes down to is time. The quicker that a leader can own, acknowledge what went wrong, the sooner people will be willing to give them a second chance at rebuilding. So it's sort of like, if somebody wronged you in the office, like if Dave, because he'd never do this, we know that he would never wrong you or slight you in any way. but say just hypothetically he did this one time, and it was pretty egregious, okay, what he had done. And if he came to you 3 weeks later and said, hey Hannah, sorry about that, won't happen again, does that feel different than if he came to you 3 hours after and said, hey Hannah?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. Right. So it's in the speed in which it's acknowledged and owned. Yeah. And then there's power in making the proper apology. It can't just be, hey, sorry, my bad, we messed up. There has to be an acknowledgement of what you did, has to be an acknowledgement of the impact that it had on the person. And then there's got to be an ask for, can I have the chance to earn that trust back again? I'd like to. So once you get to that step, then you can start building out your rehab plan, which gets back to what Dave was saying, is starting to restack those dominoes in the right direction, which takes consistency and time, built upon the right behaviors and actions, because there's no substitute for that. So you have to walk the talk. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
I mean, honestly, I really love what you said about the structure of an apology, right? It's almost like the art of apologizing is really powerful. Like how you do that matters a whole bunch, right? Yeah. I've heard so many leaders say like, hey, sorry, I mean, I really messed that up. But if you wouldn't have da 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 da, and you're like, whatever you said after, but you wouldn't have, just ruined the whole first. Like, they are not
100%.
hearing
Yeah.
nothing that is getting through to them because they heard the word but, and then a complaint about what they did.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is not leadership and an apology at all. I mean,
No.
honestly, I think the components that you named are so powerful and are vulnerable. It is vulnerable as a leader to apologize, to admit, to own, to do it fast, to ask for, hey, can I have the opportunity to learn the trust back? That's scary, right? That's terrifying in any relationship, especially one that has kind of a power dynamic associated with it. So it does matter more, right? It actually carries weight in a different way. I mean, maybe your next keynote can be the art of the apology. I like that.
Well, I mean, I actually have that in my book, the key component. Oh no, it's an important part. I mean, it truly is. I mean, the old thing. Hey, Hannah, sorry about that. Sorry, I missed your deadline. What won't happen again is different than, hey, Hannah, look, I'm sorry, I missed that deadline. And I know that ended up putting more stress on you, and you weren't able to deliver the work that you needed because someone was waiting on that from you, and that put you in a really bad spot. And I'm sorry that I put you there because I didn't have my schedule down right. I'm going to do my best to not have that happen again. I just want to have that opportunity to earn this back and let you know where I am. And I understand what it did to you. Like that's a very different
Totally.
conversation.
And for some reason, you picked up on the fact that, like, that's one of the worst things to do to Hannah. Like, I don't know how you knew that. That felt like very pointed when you said it. I was like, ooh, don't say that.
But all the better, right? All the better, because she would.
Yes.
She would be sideways. She'd be sideways.
I'm a big fan of setting expectations and sticking to them for sure.
Yes, she
there
is.
You go. So all of this is tied. No, I'm just saying all of that's tied back, to this idea of presence and authenticity, being intentional, right? Being vulnerable. We didn't talk a lot about that, but that's absolutely key. Now, we didn't see a lot of that in racing with a lot of the leaders there and such, but it probably would have helped more, in some cases, for people to recognize it and experience it, to say, oh, wow, okay, they're human. Okay, I get it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. We could probably keep going for another couple hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. And thank you so much for joining today. Dave, was there anything else that you wanted to mention or ask?
I mean, honestly, just really, Mike, as always, appreciated. I know we kind of poked at getting granular, but I do think these ideas of authenticity or presence often feel theoretical, and folks will say, like, yeah, of course I'll do that. Right. And then, the moment comes and it's not a skill that they've practiced, and they don't know what to say, and they don't know how to say it. And like, it matters I mean, just to use your apology example, I mean, I think that's absolutely profound and important, and the structure of that conversation matters. And there is a formula that's knowable, repeatable, and practicable. Like, I think that's the stuff that really, I think folks are listening for and trying to figure out, yeah, I hear you. Presence is great. Authenticity is great, but I don't get it. Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I think I'm authentic, but they don't. So what do I do? And so I just really appreciate you letting us kind of poke at you to get specific about things, and you having really good examples and structures and tips and techniques. I mean, it's why you're good at what you do. It's why folks bring you in, right? Because you get it and you know what you're doing. So really appreciate that. Maybe the last thing I would give some space for is, how do people find you? How do people engage with you? And we'll put all whatever you say in the show notes, etc. So we'll have links and access points. But
yeah, for sure. And before I go there, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come in and have this conversation with you both. And I love the forum that you all have intentionally created here, where we can poke around and dig into some things and collaborate on the ideas. And I'm sure you do that with all the guests and help build. And it's the yes end, and how we can build together. I would just say this, since all my info will be in the show notes, please feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn at Mike Mooney. On there, you'll see that. And then also my email is mike@mikemooney.com. So feel free to email me there. And, again, working with the companies to help them really create the traction they're looking for through that presence, intentionality, curiosity, mindset, and continuous improvement is just so vital today. So thank you.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
And your book is available in multiple spaces, I would imagine, as well,
It
right?
is. Yeah, it is. So I would say if you'd like to get it, it's an easy read. It's story, reflection, and actions. Very, very simple to read. Dave even read it, right? Yes.
Yeah. I've actually got it on my shelf somewhere.
Absolutely. So I would say if you want, head to my website, mikemooney.com. You can buy it there. Then I get a trigger. I can sign it and personalize it and get it out the door. So that would be great.
Great. Yeah, we'll do. Absolutely. Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm doing this right.
I got it.
Yeah, it's like, wait, I forgot that.
No, you're good.
I'm the one that's switching the spaces.
You're good. That was great. He has such a lovely, clear way of communicating and painting a point. And I mean, of course, you and I both resonate with all of the mentions about like being so human and being very connected to like, the behavior of it and the practical application of it. So yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah. What I think too, you can hear Mike's mentorship of me in the way we think and operate, right? Like there's pieces I've gleaned from him over time and practices that I've adopted. It's why I really wanted to focus on the practice of it. Because he is like, there is a skill, there is an articulation, there's a way to say things, there's a formula, there's opportunity to do it right and opportunity to do it wrong. And Mike not only lives it, but he understands it and can teach it. And so I think that's such a powerful combination, and he's a champion of it. And I've known Mike, I don't know, probably 7 years at this point in time. And at no point have I felt like he's not living what he's preaching. And I think there's something to that. It's not like he wrote the book but doesn't believe it, right? He goes and presents on these things and doesn't believe it, doesn't practice it. That's not true of him at all. He absolutely lives it, models it as an exceptional person. And I think, who better to teach than the person who's not only understanding it, but living it.
Totally. Well, I really like, there's a couple of like really practical things he mentions, like the equation of the reputation. I think that's really fascinating. And the structure of the apology. I think those are really good things for folks to take out of this conversation. I mean, so many good nuggets. But yeah, those are the things that are sticking with me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Business Velocity. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can also check out our framework at theevolvedifference.com. And remember, the time is now to take these strategies, apply your learning, and achieve velocity. We'll see you next time.